good morning, good afternoon. Thank you so much for being with us for this year's Build Blue Week. My name is Ruby Powell Dennis, and I serve as founder and executive director of Elect Black Women, an organization committed to helping Black women run for office at every level of government across the country. Our panel today is a group of incredible leaders who have done what seemed impossible. They have worked to ensure that they flip their red district blue. And so in following with today's theme, Building Blue in a Red District, I'm excited for the conversation, as well as looking forward to all the questions that we're going to receive from our audience today. So why is this conversation so important? Well, across the country, we see that there's just a tremendous amount of opportunity to make right a number of historical wrongs, whether it is making sure the communities that we serve are well represented, the policy issues that are impacting marginalized people are heard and created, or if we're just working to keep everyday hardworking people safe. Now is the time that we're seeing Democrats taking up the work that needs to happen, going after opportunities and seats that were once believed to be unflippable. But again, today's panel will talk about not only how you go about doing that, but why that work is so important. So with that, it is my pleasure to begin to introduce our guests. So our first panelist is State Representative Brianna Titone, who comes to us representing Colorado District 27. Our next guest is Cheryl Mayes, who serves as an NDTC trainer and district director for U.S. Congressman Jim Cooper. We also have Dr. Cora Neumann, who's joining us, who is a former candidate for United States Senate representing Montana. State Representative Fentrice Driskell, who comes to us from the sunny state of Florida representing District 63. And Dr. Tyler Titus, who is a current Democratic nominee for Erie County Executive, coming to us from the Bellwether area. Thank you all for being with us. And what I'd love to start by having Representative Titone talk a little bit about her journey, her work, and why she does the work that she does. Representative Titone.
Well, thanks very much for having me here today. Hi everyone. My name is Brianna Titone. I represent the district in Northern Jefferson County. It's District 27. And I'm actually serving out my second term this year, which is pretty exciting, going into my third term next year. I wanted to serve my community my whole life. It was something that I started out doing as a volunteer firefighter when I was 16 years old, as a junior firefighter. Really just felt like I wanted to find some kind of work that actually I gave back to the community. But I didn't know what that was. I didn't know how that was going to happen. And politics was probably the last thing I ever thought about. But what I really kind of developed this idea over time when 9/11 happened. I was from New York originally. I had a lot of people impacted by that. I wanted to do something as a closeted trans person. I couldn't join the military. Didn't think that was the right thing, especially back then. So I thought I could maybe become an FBI special agent. And I tried to pursue that through getting multiple degrees. I have a degree in geology, physics, geochemistry, and now software development, 2 master's degrees, 2 bachelor's degrees. I wanted that job. I wanted to help people. I wanted to serve my community, and it didn't end up happening. I got too old to finish the process. So that's when I thought about myself. I thought about actually taking care of myself for a change and not everyone else. That's when I came out as being trans. And I realized that this community I was trying to avoid, because I didn't want to be guilty by association back then, I figured this was a way for me to give back to this new community that I belong to. And that was where politics started to come in, being an activist and then becoming a politician and running in a district that was drawn to be a Republican district in 2011. I decided to run for this district when I found out that Hillary Clinton won by 12 votes in my district. And I said, well, 12 votes, that's enough for me to win. So let's do this. And, we worked really, really hard. And I'll go into the details when we get into the questions, but it's kind of unexpected how you get into these things. But I know that this was something that in my heart I wanted to do. I didn't know this was what it was. And I'm so grateful to be here.
Thank you, Representative Titone. Next, we'll go to Cheryl Mayes, who serves as the District Director for U.S. Congressman Jim Cooper. Ms. Mayes, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you. Oh, you're on mute. I feel like that should all go on a shirt and everyone gets a copy. There you go.
How about that? Okay.
Perfect.
Sorry about that. You would think after almost 2 years of virtual calls, mute is the first thing that you would think about looking at. My apologies. Again, my name is Cheryl Mayes. I am the District Director for Congressman Jim Cooper here in Tennessee's District 5. I am a former elected official. I served as a school board member in Metro Nashville Public Schools for 4 years. I served 2 of those years as the president of the board. And then, because I hadn't had enough, I decided that I wanted to run for another local race, and that was Metro Council in 2018. And I will say that one of the things that I say every time I speak to someone, I always get, well, we just knew you were going to win that race. Oh, okay. And of course, I have to follow that with my comment, well, did you vote? And I actually had someone say to me, well, I told my husband to go and vote, and I'm pretty sure he did, but do you know if he did? And the reason I asked those questions is because my race was determined by 51 votes. It was this extremely low voter turnout. And if I had received 51 additional votes, there would have been a runoff. But after immediately following that campaign, a lot of community members, when I saw them out, they would say, we just knew, everybody knew you were going to win that race. I said, so everybody knew I was going to win, so that made the decision clear that there was no need to go vote? Well, there's that. So that's how things turn out. But it's amazing to me that whether it's 12 votes or 51 votes, every vote counts, every vote matters. And I cannot express that enough. I'm sure we'll get into more specifics later, but I've been asked several times, what was it like running in a red district? Oh, it was super fun. It was very interesting. Some things that that happened during my campaign, you know, if you are one of those individuals who believes that everything is fair, and then you want to run for an elected office, we need to talk. Because depending on how badly someone wants to get into a seat, there may be some not so fair things done to dissuade individuals from voting for you. So just be mindful that if running for a particular office is something that you are truly passionate about, please make sure that you understand what it's going to take. And I say luckily, or it depends on who you talk to, but I say luckily for me, I was able to run, my Metro Council race was one of the last ones that we actually got to go out and knock doors and go to events. That was in 2018, going into 2019. And it was super hot in Nashville. It was a lot. So you have to be dedicated to what you're doing. You have to know the road that you're about to take. And you have to, especially as the world opens back up, and next year, I'm pretty sure that there will be door knockings happening and public gatherings, although they still likely will not be back to where they were pre-COVID. But there's a lot that you have to consider when you're thinking about running for office. one of those is understanding what the
Well, hold
office
on,
is
Miss
that you're running
Cheryl.
for.
Hold on,
Yeah.
we're gonna get into it. Let
Yes.
me get our other panelists
Yes,
in because we
my
want to hear everything
apologies.
you have to say. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Our next panelist comes to us from Montana, Dr. Cora Neumann. Dr. Neumann, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what brings you here.
Thank you, Ruby, and thank you. I'm so honored to be a part of this panel with all of you today. Really, thank you for having me. I'm calling in from the beautiful state of Montana. Montana, one thing that I want to share, I feel like a lot of times people just, if you don't know Montana, you think it's just a red state. Montana's a purple state. We have had, 2 Democratic senators for a lot of our history, Democratic governors. And so it's a state that, I spend a lot of my time talking to people about, that it leans red. And I am, I ran in a district that really did go red last cycle, but it's a purple state. And I think a lot of states in the country that people assume are red actually have some pretty strong purple strains. And so I just like to remind, I do a lot of educating when I talk to people about Montana, about what's possible here. But it certainly is, it runs more red, especially right now. And I was raised in Montana by a union carpenter and a homemaker. When I was a kid, people didn't talk about politics. They really, it was who's the neighbor who's going to help you fix your fence, or help when the storm hits, or help when there's a fire. And I think those are the roots in Montana that running here I really focused on. What is it that makes a good neighbor? What are you looking for when you're looking to build a community? What are the qualities in a person? What are the characters, right? And so my background is I actually ran for Senate. I lost my father in a lumber mill accident when I was a baby. And if we'd been closer to good care, he may have survived. And those are the challenges that Montanans understand, right? Some people drive 5 hours to get to the care that they need. And so I just focused on the issues and challenges that we share, and also focused on how we in rural states work hard to overcome as well, right? We have a lot of challenges. We feel pretty far flung, pretty far out there. And like, we really can only rely on each other when the going gets tough. And so running here and building community here is really about focusing on how we can help each other, and really focusing on what we do share. So I'm happy to be here and happy to answer questions as they come up. But that's one message I want to share above all, is that Montana's heart is purple.
Thank you for that, Dr. Neumann. Next, our panelist is State Representative Fentrice Driskell, who represents District 63 in the beautiful state of Florida. Representative Driskell, tell us a little bit about who you are and what brings you here today.
Hi, Ruby. Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here today. Thank you to the NDTC for having a program like this. I think it is wonderful that we're able to get together and share best practices. I look forward to sharing what my experience has been, but also learning from the other panelists. And for everybody who's watching us out there in virtual world, just hi, thank you for being here. I think this is so important for the party to talk through, because we know that if we're going to build political power in our states, respectively, and in our country, we've got to be able to talk to voters and connect to them in districts that may not be thoroughly blue or completely lean blue. So I was first elected in 2018 after having flipped a district from red to blue. It has been a very interesting process, and I know we've got some specific questions about what it is like running in a red district, but for me, it really is trying to find ways to connect with people at that common language of values. And you've got to think through ways for people to want to vote for you, as opposed to just vote for a party. And to me, the way that you do that is communicating through the language of values. So very much looking forward to the conversation today. I also serve as policy chair for the Florida House Democratic Caucus, and I am the leader designate. So I'll be taking over that caucus pretty soon. So just thank you for having me, and look forward to sharing more of our experiences as a conversation evolves.
Thank you, Representative Driskell, for your leadership. We appreciate you. And now I'd like to introduce Dr. Tyler Titus, who is the Democratic nominee for Erie County Executive. Dr. Titus, tell us a little bit about who you are and what brings you here today.
Thank you. So I'm Dr. Tyler Titus, they, them pronouns. I was born into rural poverty in a city or a town it's about 45 miles south of where I am right now. And it's a town named Titusville. So yes, I am Tyler Titus from Titusville. That often helps people remember my name. But my story really begins in there and what happened in that town where I was born to teen parents. My father, who was a Marine, my mom, who was working odd jobs to keep our lights turned on and food on our table. And when they're what started in a ball of fury and passion ended in a ball of fury and chaos, and they went their separate ways. My stepfather, who was a logger, he had dropped out of high school in 10th grade. My father went on to become a dairy farmer because the industry left, the jobs left. And the training wasn't there. And so people were doing what they needed to do to get by. And that was finding odd jobs, finding a way, to just find a place in the city and in the town. What we see happen, and this is happening across the nation, is when those manufacturing and those industries leave, it's replaced by hopelessness and desperation. And we were not special in that regard, right? We had the same struggles that we're seeing in many of these Rust Belt cities. So when I came up, prior to graduating high school, though, and this is an important part of my story, I didn't see myself as a young queer person existing anywhere. I wasn't in any of the books. I wasn't in any of the lessons that the teacher were talking about. And when I was on TV, I was the butt of the joke. And so that really started to form how I saw myself and how I felt represented and disenfranchised by those who were supposed to be representing me. And through that, and that self-identity that I was struggling with, I had 2 suicide attempts prior to graduating high school. And that was simply because I didn't know how somebody like me was supposed to exist in a place where I was told I wasn't even a human. I wasn't even supposed to be alive, right? And so that is what motivated me. So taking all the poverty, taking in who I was as a human and how I identify, and the representation, really feeling forgotten, that the government who was supposed to be there defending and rallying around people like me and my family just pushed us aside. And so that is what drew me to politics. I was sitting at a lunch one time with a guardian ad litem who was representing some youth who were in the foster care system. I was a therapist within the foster care system for youth who were in the foster care system. And I was complaining about just how the school system itself was really failing a lot of these youth. And it's like, somebody's got to do something about this. And without a beat, she said, well, you're somebody. And in that minute, it started my political career. Somebody who had said that they were never going to jump into this. I didn't want to deal with, the nuances and the bartering and the trading, and I didn't want to deal with any of that. I realized in that moment that I had a lived experience, that I had an educational background and my work experience that made me exactly who needed to step up and run. And so that's what launched me in 2017 to run for the school board. And then when I became the president of the school district that I serve in right now, I learned even more about the systems at a whole county perspective that are not working for most families. And so when our current county executive said she wasn't running, that I knew that I needed to step up. We are also in a purple county. In 2016, Donald Trump flipped Erie County back to red. And so the whole state of Pennsylvania went. And our bellwether county, and then in 2020, we were able to flip it back by a 1% margin here in Erie County. And we were able to get Biden in our Commonwealth. And so I take that, like, if we can flip that, and I had ran as a write-in, very open trans candidate in 2017, right on the heels of Trump's win and him flipping our county, and won, that I have what it takes and the passion and the momentum, and I have the understanding of our county and those lived experiences to step into this role as well too. So I know we're going to get into a little bit more, but that's who I am and what I'm bringing to the table.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Titus, and thank you for your leadership. So our first question, I'm going to direct it at State Representative Titone. Talk to us about what are the key parts of a campaign that need to be considered differently for folks who are running in a red district?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. It's always something that we have to overcome running in a red district. And, depending on what our identities are, we also have additional potential obstacles as well. I know Tyler and I have a common bond there, being trans. But really, the things that you have to do if you want to run for office and you're not that familiar with politics, but you have a desire to do it, is to get trained. You have to get the training to know how to do it, because there is a formula that works. And that is a very important aspect of what they're doing. There's a lot of different places you can go. If you're a woman, you can go to Emerge. If there's an Emerge chapter in your state or somewhere local to you. If you're an LGBT person, you go to the Victory Institute and you can get training there. There's some local groups that do training as well. So make sure you know how to run for office. So when I ran for my seat in Colorado in 2016, Hillary Clinton did win by 12 votes, but the Republican, he won by 14%. And there was a third party candidate who took 5%. So the Democrat got whooped in that race really, really bad. So I had to overcome thousands and thousands of votes that people actually cast for the Republican and actually get them to vote for me. And my district tends to be very high turnout. And this isn't the case with a lot of other people. So I had to get everybody to vote for me and not vote for the other person. So that was another obstacle. And if you do that research on what your district looks like, you're going to know what your strategy is. You have to know what your win number is. How many votes do you need? What are the voters like? Well, how many unaffiliated voters? They may be the deciding factor in your race. And they were for mine, because about over 40% were unaffiliated voters. And almost 90% of active voters voted in 2018, which is a huge number. It was almost 95% in 2020. So I have one of the highest turnout districts. So I had to get everybody to vote for me, because they were going to turn out whether I was there or not, and whether I told them to do it. So you have to do that. Local organizations. Now, I really leaned heavily on an organization that popped up because of the Trump presidency. And it was a progressive group in my city, and they wanted to see change happen. So, I got involved with them. I showed up to their meetings. I really got involved with what they were doing. And then they supported me through volunteer work. When you're running in a red district, especially one as red as mine was, you can't expect the Democrats to come help you. You can't expect a lot of people to turn out or give you money, because they don't believe you're going to win, because it's like really hard. And you have to overcome all that by energizing people and get them interested and get them excited and say, hey, no, we can do this. Here's why. Here are the numbers. This is the strategy. Show them how it works. And then you can get them to actually go through and support you, because they will support you if you can get them excited about it. Now, fundraising is a really difficult thing, I mentioned, and I had a really hard time fundraising, because nobody wants to bet on the three-legged horse in the horse race, because that's how they viewed me. They viewed me as someone who can never win. They're like, I'm not going to place a bet on someone who's not going to win. And there were a lot of people who donated to every other candidate. And then me, I was like, I got maybe $50. Now I have $400 limits on my campaign fundraising anyway. So it's hard for me to raise money to begin with at $400 max. But grassroots support, getting people excited outside your district. I mean, especially if you're a game-changing candidate like Tyler, like myself, if you're a minority person running in a district that hasn't seen someone, you have to accentuate that to the right people, but not run on that. I did not run on being a trans person. I ran on being the person who wanted to do the work for the district. And you have to do it. You have to say the same thing over and over again. You have to mean it. You have to believe it. You have to live it. And that's how you convince people, with authenticity. You have real conversations with people. You talk to them. You go door knocking. You knock the shit out of those doors. Let me tell you. We were the number 3 House district in Colorado knocking doors in 2018. unsupported. We were the #3 House district, and I was working full-time finishing my master's degree that year. So, it will be hard. It will be 10 times harder than anybody else will run. But you can do it if you really focus on it and you get the right people and the right advisors, your kitchen cabinet with good ideas, strong ideas. You can do this if you really put a plan together. But you have to have a plan together. Don't just jump in head first in the middle of a finance period, throwing up bad numbers because you didn't get things together. You didn't have a plan. It has to be methodical. You have to think about timing. There's a lot of books out there you can do, but the training you'll get from any of these organizations that do the training, they will help you understand all of those different aspects, and that will help you formulate that plan to win. You're going to have to get volunteers. You're going to have to, reach out to every single person you've ever known for some money. Give them a reason to give to you. Give them a reason to vote for you, and really come to the table with all your best attributes. Anything that you've done, think about your resume and trying to pack that resume up with everything you possibly can. Those are all the things that you're going to want to tell people about, your accomplishments, the things that you've done, and that's how you win people over. I mean, I have 4 degrees. That was something that was easy to sell people. Being a scientist, with climate change and the environment being the #1 thing happening right now, I can talk about that, and I can talk about that with, authority, because I have a degree in that topic. So, the strong points that you bring to the table, if you're in economic type things, talk about the financial aspects of where you're running, but know the district. And that's where the door knocking comes in. You know the district, you ask the questions, you make it about the people and not about yourself. It's not about you, it's about people, about what they want, about what you can do for them. You have to make them feel important. And that's how you win them over. I mean, I've had people who said they voted for Trump and still voted for me. It's hard, but you can do it, and you need to knock the doors as the candidate and knock the most difficult doors that you can, and leave the volunteers to do the Democrats and maybe the lean Democrat people. Mm-hmm. You have to go after the ones that you have the opportunity to flip, to have those tough conversations.
Thank you, Representative Titone. I'd like to go over to you, Dr. Neumann, because you ran a statewide race, just to hear a little bit of, your perspective in terms of, again, the question being, what are the key parts of a campaign that need to be considered differently for folks who are running in your case, who was considered a red community?
Thank you. And Brianna, I'm so inspired by your story. Thank you for sharing that. I love listening to all of your stories. I think that the key to it is, I'm going to just echo what Representative Titone said about connecting with the people in your district, right? I think at the end of the day, most people want what's best for their families and communities. And I think that there are a lot of ways to find, it's not about changing minds, it's about winning over hearts, right? And really connecting around the things that we all care about and that we all want to see for the future of our state. Montana has some really, our biggest industries are agriculture and out in the outdoor industry. So farming and ranching and outdoor recreation, fishing, hunting. We have incredible public lands. And those are all things that we share as Montanans in terms of wanting to pass on a legacy to our children. What are the ways that we want to, on some of the more contentious issues, for example, around energy, what's important to us in terms of ensuring that our air and water is clean for our children and our grandchildren and future generations? How can we talk about that in a way that is truly local and resonates with the communities that we're connecting with? How can we ensure that Montana has a really high suicide rate, and it is spiking now because of COVID? How can we talk about the challenges that all of our communities are facing in terms of accessing healthcare? Those stories about people driving 5 hours, right? The stories of challenges and loss. And so I find that if you connect on issues that you share based on your, for me personally, my experience, growing up here, the challenges my family faced. I lost my father early on due to lack of access to the care that he needed. And then my stepfather was a union carpenter. And at some point he had to drive 3 hours. He had to commute 3 hours back and forth just to find the next best union job when we were having really, some economic downturn here in Montana. And so I think it is really just connecting with voters on issues that you share, on concerns that you share, and putting politics aside as much as you can, which is very, very hard, in today's atmosphere, and today's climate. When one of the things that I worked on over the last year was COVID response. I have a background in public health, which I pursued public health because of my own family story, and I had worked on Ebola. And I knew that when COVID came to Montana, especially when it came to and started to impact our tribes, our indigenous communities, it wasn't when, it wasn't if, it was when it got here. And how could we stay out ahead of, get ahead of the curve and make sure that we were delivering aid and resources to those communities immediately. And so I think it's really just, listening, showing up. I feel like again, raised by a union carpenter, there's no such thing as an excuse. You either show up or you don't. If you don't show up, the job doesn't get done. You are there, you're part of a team. And so when things get tough, you roll up your sleeves and you get to work and you find ways to support each other. It's not that people don't have hardships, but you show up and you deliver for your community. So I think it's that common ground. Not saying it's easy. I want to acknowledge all of the challenges. Representative Titone, that you were saying about, going door to door, not that there aren't so many challenges there. So I don't want to brush those aside. I want to acknowledge those, but also I do believe it's about starting with that person-to-person connection.
Now I'd like to go over to you, State Representative Driskell, to talk about, when you think of your own campaign, what were some key things that you did that really made a difference and ended up, being the difference maker in terms of you getting the outcome you wanted on election day?
Thank you. And sorry, I was focused on trying to unmute. It wasn't working. You said, what were the key things that made a difference?
Yep. In terms of your specific campaign that
Sure.
ensured that you got the outcome you wanted on election day.
Absolutely. So thanks for that question. So I think there were a few things. The first is that I made sure that I understood the issues that resonated in my district. The second is that I made sure that I defined myself first before my opponent could have a chance to do it. And the third, and I alluded to this a little in my introduction, was that I gave people reasons to vote for me as opposed to just voting for their party, because when you run in a red area, you automatically start as the underdog. So just to weave in a little bit of my story and give a few examples about that, understanding the issues that matter in the district. So understanding that if you're running and there's not a Democrat there, you may not have access to good polling to understand what the districts are, what the issues are. If there was somebody who ran before you and they had enough resources to do the polling, definitely ask your predecessor candidate if you can get that information. For me, it was a little less scientific than that. It was getting out into the community at, community forums or going to where, et cetera, and trying to understand, just asking, what are the issues that matter to you? The three issues that bubbled up in my district were public education, adequate funding for high quality public education, the environment, and gun reform, common sense gun reform. And you have to remember, I ran in 2018, just after we had that horrible tragedy at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in South Florida. So those are the issues that kept bubbling to the top. Then I mentioned you have to define yourself before your opponent defines you. And you also have to draw a sharp contrast between you and your opponent on the issues that matter. So when it comes to public schools, my story is that I'm a Florida native. I'm a product of Florida's public schools. My mom taught public school for over 35 years. My dad, also very humble beginnings. He was a truck driver and then a dispatcher at Publix, where shopping is a pleasure, where everybody shops in Florida, right? And so being able to take that public education, but with a strong work ethic, achieve my dream of going to Harvard. That was my educational aspiration. And I was able to do that with a public education from right here in Florida schools. Go to Georgetown, become a lawyer, get a good paying job as a lawyer, and take my family from that level to the level of having graduate and professional degrees in a generation. That mattered. I was able to share that story and say, hey, look, I am proof of concept that when we invest in our children, we invest in our schools, this is, the outcome. When it came to the environment, I was able to look at my opponent's voting record and point out each and every time he voted for relaxed regulations that led to some of the issues that we've been having in Florida with our environment. With respect to the common sense gun reform, I was able to look there and say, listen, this is someone who voted for open carry on college campuses. In my district is the University of South Florida. That's a very big issue for our region, especially as USF is one of our major economic drivers in the region, and you want to make sure that the schools, absolutely stays safe. So the sharp contrast I mentioned. And then the third point was getting people to vote for me and to not just vote for party. So I mentioned I have a law degree. I'm an attorney by trade. I continue to hear, how are you going to, even if you win, how are you going to get to Tallahassee and be able to do anything? Well, listen, I'm an attorney by trade. I'm a business litigator. I am used to this. I am used to sitting across from someone who wants, they are diametrically opposed to me. They want the opposite of what I am trying to get for my client, and thinking through how we can build some consensus. How can we come to an agreement? And those skills are absolutely transferable to the legislature. In Florida, the Democrats are deeply, deeply in the minority. It's very challenging. And yet I've been able to get things done because I am a consensus builder. We were able to get a police reform bill passed last year. I'm so honored to have helped carry that in Florida, in the same state where we were dealing with House Bill 1, which made national news. It was the harshest anti-protester bill that got passed in the nation. Against that backdrop, I was able to get a police reform bill passed with unanimous bipartisan support. How? Because I'm a consensus builder. So I was able to bring all of that to bear. I also heard, because in my region in Tampa Bay, we never had someone Black represent in any district other than was thought of as a typically Black district. And on top of it, I'm a Democrat, and I'm a Black female Democrat trying to run in this red district. People thought I was crazy. But I also have a background of being a first. I was the first Black student to be elected student government president at Harvard. I was one of the first 5 or 6 Black women to make partner at my law firm. Knocking down and breaking down barriers is nothing new for me. And why should it be any different this time? So I was able to basically build a case for why people should invest in me. And I just wanted to echo the part that Rep. Titone said about raising money and how difficult that is. If you want to run in a red district, like I mentioned, you already start as the underdog. So you are going to have to do your legwork and make sure that you understand who your first investors are going to be, so that when you finally do put yourself out there, you know who to call. You can have your some strong fundraising numbers your first month, and that builds legitimacy. That was able to help me a great deal in my campaign. So those are some of the things that I think made the difference.
Thank you for that. And just to give everyone a time check, we have about 15 minutes left, and we do have another session coming up right after this. So for the next couple of minutes, we'll be doing a bit more of a lightning round, because we also want to make sure that questions from the audience, if you have a burning question that getting the guidance from someone on our panel would be helpful to you, please make sure you drop those questions in the chat, because again, we want to make sure that we are sharing our knowledge, our expertise, to help ensure that wherever you're running, whatever level of government you are running for, that you walk away from the conversation with some tools and some guidance that'll help ensure that you get the outcome you want on election day. So with that, I'm going to pivot us a little bit, and I'm going to send this question to Ms. Cheryl Mayes. Talk to us a little bit about what's the best way to connect with voters who may be swing voters or folks who are undecided. You'll have 2 minutes for this question, Cheryl. Oh, you're still on mute.
Now, here we go. Yeah, so one of the best ways that I've found is to do exactly what we've heard for the several minutes here, is consensus building. If you don't know your community, how do you represent them adequately? And one of the things that I would say, and people thought I was crazy in doing this, say some of my best conversations would occur in the grocery line, or standing online at a Walmart, or someplace where people were very vocal about their opinions on a variety of different things. And this is especially true of my run for the school board, because when I ran, that was during a time where charter schools were moving into our city, and there was some questionable, like a lot of people didn't understand the process. And so you do your research and find out. And I made it my point to always ask the person who seemed to have the most volatile questions, who was adamant about this isn't going to work. Well, tell me why you think it's not going to work. And let me tell you how I think it can work. And once you vote for me, I'm not asking you for your vote, because I'm pretty sure after this conversation, I will get that. After I get your vote and after I win this election, then you and I can come back together and continue to have this conversation to see how this works for all of our children, not just one set of children. So consensus building is absolutely the way to go. If you don't know your community, how do you represent them? It seems simplistic, but it absolutely makes all the difference in the world.
Yep. Thank you for sharing that. We do have a question. This one comes to us from Joanne Terry. She asks, did any of the panelists attempt to reach out to Republicans who might share common values during their campaign, whether it's women's groups, churches, right-leaning clubs? If yes, how? And if not, why? Dr. Tyler, I'd like to give you an opportunity to answer this. And if you could keep your response to 2 minutes, because we have a couple of other questions I'd like to be able to share.
Absolutely. And so one of the things that I think is really important to understand as we're moving to flip into this, a blue zone, that it's really identifying, in addition to who the formal leaders are, but who the informal influencers and leaders are in a community. And this really does lean into this question quite nicely. We all want our community to be better, to be safer, to be more vibrant, right? That is something we can all align on. And as a therapist, one of the techniques that we would use, even in family therapy, is that alignment. How do we create a trust and establish safe space between the two of us so we can talk? And then we can figure out how do we get to that end result. We might have 2 different pathways to get there, but the odds are we have pretty similar endpoints that we want to reach. And so that's where we would start. And that's how I would approach a lot of this is, where do we align first? Let's talk about that. And then let's move then into the areas we might not align first, but let's get the solutions and the work done first that we can. In my current race right now, there was an individual who did not raise any money other than the $400 that he had put in for his campaign. He still garnered 45% of the Republican vote in this area. He was one of the first calls that I made after we came out of this primary, and I sat down with him when his opponent went, and I said, let's get to know each other. He came out and he's in my commercials with me, he's in my cam spots with me through the government TV, explaining why he has endorsed me, because we have areas in which we align. And he believes that I'm the one who's going to be able to get it done. So finding those partnerships, they may seem daunting, they may seem terrifying, but if you can go into those conversations with, I know we're going to find something we have in common, find that ground, and then use that to build the other parts, will take you so far. But don't just focus on the elected officials, board members, or the CEOs. Focus on the informal community members. Those tend to be leaders within churches, nonprofit organizations. Who are running those? Who do people go to that they trust? Find the people, the barbers. Where do people go that they feel safe to communicate and connect? And you build a relationship with them because they are vouchers for you. They can bring you in front of a group of people and say, hey, I've got to know them. I trust them. Here's why.
Thank you for that, Dr. Titus. So this question comes to us from Tim. Tim asks, running against 4 Dems and an incumbent rep, and it is tricky. How do you cooperate but compete in a nonpartisan primary? Representative Titone, I'd like to kick this one over to you, given that you had a pretty challenging and crowded race.
Well, I was fortunate to not have a primary because nobody wanted to run in this district to begin with. So that was pretty easy. But we're running into a lot of redistricting right now, and some of our maps are showing some of our own people in districts together, and that's always a possibility. And when we were having these maps come out, I made sure that I reached out to my colleagues who live nearby to talk to them and say, hey, look, you know, we might be in the same district together. We may have to run against each other. What are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? You know, what are our options here? And this is a difficult conversation to have. You know, sometimes, you know, if you can talk to other people who are in your party that are running, you have a nonpartisan primary, which is really, I mean, that's interesting. I don't know why they would even do that. But, you know, if you want to try to reduce the field, have those conversations with your colleagues and see if you can get them to support you, or if there's a reason why, you know, you think that you can win over them, having those conversations or having someone else have that conversation on your behalf could make that, make them sort of hand over the reins to you to try to run. These are really difficult situations to be in, and they're not comfortable, but you have to have uncomfortable conversations. And sometimes, you know, someone needs to be the bigger person and say, okay, look, I don't, you know, your position's more important. You represent something that I don't. You know, if it's a minority person who needs to be represented and you're a cisgender white guy, then maybe you should think about, you know, giving that other person a chance to run. If you are in a position where, you know, you can self-fund your race and you're like, well, I'm just going to self-fund and I'm going to destroy you with money, that might be something you need to tell the other person to say, like, wow, I mean, you're making it really tough for me. Maybe this isn't the right race. I'm going to try to do something else. They're difficult conversations, but sometimes you need to get out of your comfort zone and have them.
Thank you for sharing that. All right, we're winding down our conversation. And so we want to just give our panelists an opportunity to answer one final question. If there's one piece of advice that you could give to our audience about running in a red district, what would that be? So we'll start in reverse order. We'll have you go first, Dr. Tyler Titus.
Do not for 1 minute believe that you do not have what it takes to represent and to be a voice. Do not let anyone dissuade you. Do not let anyone tell you you have to wait your turn, that it's not your time. If you are connected, if you are passionate, if you believe in what you are standing for, you deserve to be in local, state, or federal positions. And don't let anybody convince you otherwise.
Thank you for that. State Representative Driskell.
Thank you. I would say outwork them. You have to outwork them, and you have to, I just was trying to put this in the chat. Someone asked if you should, you know, show up to more Republican leaning places. You need to show up everywhere. You have a vision to share for your district that you want people to invest in. And that means you can't be afraid to go to churches. You can't be afraid to go to Rotary clubs. You can't be afraid to show up at the places where your opponent is. Really lean into that and draw those contrasts and show up in those places and outwork them.
Yes, indeed. You got to show up and show out. I love that. Dr. Cora Neumann, your advice.
Well, as a health practitioner, I would say make sure to take care of yourself, because this is a marathon. There are times when it feels like a sprint. But I think one of the best ways to take care of yourself is to be true to who you are. Return to your story, return to your why, return to the stories of the people that you've met to energize you, and make sure to really take care of yourself and continue to remind yourself you're doing it for the right reasons. And like Tyler said, Dr. Titus said, your voice matters, and you can, don't let anybody tell you that you can't. So I just think it's, continue to return to your heart, take care of yourself, and connecting with voters does energize you.
It does. Ms. Cheryl Mayes, your advice. Oh, you're on mute.
Of course, I was on mute. Yeah, so I apologize for that. But what I would say to anyone who is running for an elected office, regardless of what that office is, and regardless of who you're running against, just remember integrity is everything. Never make a promise you can't keep. And above all else, know what you're running for. Understand the office that you're running for. If you're running for dog catcher, you need to understand what it means to be a dog catcher in your district. If you're running for a state representative seat, or whether it's state, local, or federal seats, know what it is you're running for. Because, and I'll go back to integrity, the moment you make a promise that you cannot keep, if you get elected, the first thing that your voters are going to ask for is that you come through on any promises that you made during your campaign. And the moment you can't do that, you have lost credibility before you've even started. So integrity is everything.
Thank you for that, Ms. Cheryl.
You're welcome.
State Representative Titone.
Well, and I don't want to say that you should misrepresent yourself, but I want you to feel like you already have the position. You need to act like you're already there, that you're doing it. Have a better newsletter than your opponent. Show up to the things that they're not, especially if they're an incumbent. Show up to where they are. Be there all the time. Have the confidence to show I'm doing this job just like my opponent's doing it. And sometimes, people may get the impression you already have it, especially if it's an open seat and you're really, telling everybody about what's going on in the district, what's going on here, and be informative. Get that newsletter, get that mailing list up, and really just show what you're going to deliver when you get the job. So if you start delivering it as a candidate, people are going to know, oh, wow, I can really count on this person to really deliver on what they're saying. And that gives them confidence that you can do the job once you get elected.
Thank you for that. All right. If you have not already, please make sure you jump in the chat and complete our end of event survey. Not only is your survey input very helpful to the National Democratic Training Committee team, but it helps us make sure that the trainings we offer and provide continue to be informative, helpful, and ideally transformative. As we think about the building blue in a red district today, are you looking to take the next step towards winning in a red district? If so, right after our session, we'll be hosting another training called How to Persuade Voters in a Red District with NDTC trainer Josh Norris. Our NDTC staff will put the link in the chat. So if you are looking for where do I go, where's the link, please take a moment and check the chat, not only for the end of event survey, but also for the link to the next training. From there, we'll have a panel flipping seats, flipping voters, campaign lessons from red areas. They'll be taking place at 6 p.m. Eastern time tonight. Also, while there are many events throughout the week, get ready for our final closing event, Building the Future with NDTC Honorary Chair and U.S. Representative Nikema Williams, which will take place on Friday, September 24th at 2 p.m. Eastern. Again, all the resources are present in the chat. Thank you again for being with us. Please follow our panel of experts on social media, on Twitter, Facebook, or wherever you go for your social media content. That concludes our training. Y'all stay safe, and we'll talk to you before you know it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey, I'm Kelly Dietrich, the CEO and founder of the National Democratic Training Committee. For more like this, head on over to traindemocrats.org. Thanks for watching.